A little longer.
You need something? What is it? You hungry? Well, you're in luck, pal, 'cause food's ready. Kitty A always makes too much. Hope you like loud talkers, too, 'cause got a pair of those upstairs. You see something you like? You a demon.
Nero, the food's getting cold!
Kitty, get back inside now!
I'm taking this back. I'm running out of time.
Wait!
It's nearly time. At last, I will.
And thus, a true legend rises once again. Welcome to part 1 of Vergil's playthrough of Devil May Cry 5. The main difference is that the difficulty in choice is going to be Legendary Dark Knight, a difficulty exclusive to Special Edition and modding, where the enemy count is drastically heightened, perfect for showcasing Vergil's true power. Vergil has every single skill he had in 4 Special Edition, and I'll be making sure to use them as and when, as well as a few extra new trinkets, not just exclusive to his Devil Trigger. Starting with Doppelganger. His normal Devil Trigger has been completely replaced with Doppelganger, not too dissimilar to the reboot, but his original Devil Trigger is still intact, but it now works the same as Dante's Sin Devil Trigger, just has a much shorter charge up. You don't need anywhere near as much meter to charge it up as you do with Dante. I think it's like 2 whole points of Devil Trigger less. But he has the entirety of Yamato's moveset, he has the entirety of Beowulf, and he has Force Edge, even though it is no longer Force Edge, the actual item you're using. He uses a Mirage Blade that acts like Force Edge, but works the same way. And to be honest, I think I prefer it. Aesthetically, I definitely prefer it, because it gives Vergil a lot more flair, whilst chronologically still making sense. Ignoring, like, you know, Dante having Beowulf by the end of 3, but whatever. But Vergil has a few new skills that are more universal to him that he didn't before. What I mean is, in DMC4 Special Edition, both Beowulf and Force Edge had a triangle circle attack, where you press it at the same time it did a special thing. With Beowulf it did the kicks, and with Force Edge it did drive and overdrive. Well, firstly, they've changed the command to something that's a bit more consistent and easier to pull off. It's back forward, because there wasn't a back forward for either of them beforehand, so having them both be back forward then attack is just, it's a lot easier, and for me personally, more consistent, because I'd always ever so slightly nudge one before the other. It happened all the time in 4SE. But additionally, he has one that goes on Yamato now as well, where he'll do a very wide slice, and then when he clicks the sword back in, anything that is in the vicinity of that slice will be drawn to him, and it does have stun properties, so you're just dragging all the enemies to your face and stunning them for 3 strikes. He also has judgment cuts, as same as always, and perfect judgment cuts, but new to 5 is that you can chain perfect judgment cuts. Something similar to this existed in 3 Special Edition, but there wasn't perfect judgment cuts in 3. That was a thing introduced in 4, and technically the reboot. but now you can string them together for a sequence of 3. Or, if you're in Sin Devil Trigger mode, using Trick Down, you can keep it going infinitely. But you have to be very consistent on the timing to keep it going as effectively as it is. But it is fantastic if you can. His concentration gauge from 4 is back in full force, starting at level 0, going to level 1, and then maxing at level 2. When at level 2, you have access to new skills, and his range and damage is drastically heightened. So being at level 2, Vergil becomes the overpowered monster he was always destined to be. You saw earlier that we used Judgment Cut End, because of course we bloody did. But he has a Judgment Cut End-esque skill for every weapon now. Something else that goes back to my point of making Vergil have more universal commands. If you hold forward while locked onto an enemy and hit triangle and circle with a full Sin Devil Trigger gauge and max concentration, which is level 2, it doesn't have to hit the bar be 100%, just 80%, you will use one of those ultimates. You will either use Judgment Cut, you will either use the Beowulf Hell on Earth, I think it's called, or the true Deep Stinger that Force Edge gets. But by doing so, it will spend the entirety of your Sin Devil Trigger. But something that can, you know, really help you exploit it in the way you used to be able to in 4, where you could just spam it. If you're actually in the Sin Devil Trigger, it only takes about 10% of the bar instead of the entirety of it. Well, I say that, it's dependent on which attack you used. Judgment Cut End doesn't use as much, but Hell on Earth uses a shit ton. Actually, this is a perfect example to show you. This is Hell on Earth. Use Beowulf, lock on forward, triangle circle, you nuke the shit out of everything. This is True Deep Stinger. I think it's just called True Stinger or Deep Stinger, not True Deep, but I can't remember which way it's around, so that's what I'm going to call it. Which turns you into a chainsaw and rips everything. And to wrap it up, here's good old Judgment Cut End, which has a much bigger range than it used to. Also worth mentioning, Hell on Earth, by a country mile, is the hardest hitting attack in the game. Look at that fucking damage. But let's rip out Devil Trigger, or the Doppelganger, and we can end the fight just like that. And this fight we're scripted to lose, we just rinsed. We will be continuing into the main campaign, so don't you worry. But yeah, that just ends. You can just rinse the fight with Vergil. He's that bafflingly powerful. We're gonna have a fucking field trip. I am the storm that is approaching, provoking black clouds in isolation. I am reclaimer of my name. Born in flames, I have been blessed. My family crest is a demon of death. Quick question, why wasn't that the box art? That would have been such a better box art for DMC5 Special Edition than the one we got. The one we got is just such an assault of colours that I just don't like it, especially compared to the original DMC5 box art, where it's just the backs of the 3 heroes walking towards impending doom. It was such a cool image to be replaced with the Smorgasbord Special Edition. Anyway, let's just pretend we lost that fight as we go on to Mission 1. It's like previous campaigns, Vergil's is just unique opening, unique ender, the rest is the same. But here's that attack with the new Yamato attack I was on about, where you can do a wide slice and then pull enemies in. And this is chaining judgment cuts, is what I mean. If you get a perfect judgment cut and get used to the timing, you can start chaining them. You're going to see every time I chain them though, it's probably going to be on the ground and very rarely in the air. Just because I'm not as consistent on the timing for it in the air. Because the timing is different. It's ever so slightly shorter, the timing, so I always do it slightly off because of it, whilst on the ground. Because I think it's because it's a stance thing, like Vergil has to correct his stance every time he does it. It's a ever so slightly longer, like, timing for it, that you just don't have to worry about in the air, because, like, you see that I did the normal timing, but it didn't work there. He also has this crazy ass attack for some reason, which I'm not going to use that often because I'm not that keen on it. It's good for a free heal, but it's entirely based on your concentration. The higher your concentration, the longer V comes out of you. You stab yourself and bring V out, and all the demons come along with him and cause some damage.
Let's have some fun.
But it spends all of your concentration, and to be honest, for me personally, max concentration Vergil is more significant of a threat to the enemy than World of V would ever be. Which I know is me just dogging on V again. But that, like, super, like, almighty blast attack that V has where he uses everything, should have been on his base moveset. It should have been, like, a spend Devil Trigger and do things like that. It's like, even little things like that would have helped go a long way to make V even more interesting to play as. These guys are annoying me. I was trying to warp to them because, yeah, bringing back with DMC4, you can warp to enemies if you're locked on and hit circle. You have to be in range though, and it can't hit a shield. If it hits a shield or something, it won't go through, which is why it wouldn't go through with these guys, annoyingly. But he has all of his sword tricks that you know has. Like, you can do summon swords, you can do blistering, you can do raining. You can do surround sword. Well, I think that's not what it's called, but it's what you know what I mean, where the sword surrounds you or the opponent. And just like in DMC4, they kind of like, well, I say it's more in line with DMC3, I'd argue actually. The power of the swords seem to be kind of really over-heightened. Like, I feel like when everyone mentioned that Vergil is drastically overpowered in 4, the devs just went, okay, how do we do this more then? Because they just gave him straight up boss skills. And I know he had like Judgment Cut End before, which was already kind of like a big boss skill. But they've just gone so all out with Vergil. They've made easily the most fun version of Vergil in existence. Yes, he absolutely breaks the game in 2, and you're really going to feel that. I mean, you already saw it at the Urizen fight. But, to be honest, I always treat Vergil as like the reward of the game. Like, once you beat the main story, your reward is absolutely ripping the heads off of everything that once gave you a challenge as Vergil. And it's been like that since DMC3, and even to an extent carried over into the reboot, even though the reboot, you know, had a unique story and a unique boss, and like got rid of like the only interesting enemy in the game, but whatever. As we press on to the roots. Also, since there's no cutscenes other than the opening ending, and there's only one unique boss in this journey, the final boss, every single boss, you just go to it, it fades to black, they start and their name's in the corner. But what's interesting is that there's a couple bosses later on that clearly they never intended for it to be like this, so they don't have a nickname for them. Like, I say nickname, they don't have like a key phrase. They say the title, but then they'll say like demonic roots, the Clyforth roots. Or they'll say like giant devouring beasts, Goliath, which I don't think is accurate, but I'm just making an example here. But you don't, some of them don't have that. When you're also, just even more stuff to add to the sheer audacity of this broken ass bitch. When Vergil's in Sin Devil Trigger, perfect judgment cuts hit every enemy. It doesn't matter how many they are, all of them are taking a judgment cut. So if you chain judgment cuts together, do what I was on about, where I said if you trick down, you can infinitely chain them with good timing. You can just rinse every single enemy in the game with no effort whatsoever. It's the only character that makes Hell on Hell mode somewhat interesting, because you can just get some distance and start ripping. Which unfortunately doesn't mean much, because trophies, with the sole exception of LDK and Vergil's exclusive trophies, every other trophy is disabled when playing as Vergil. Maybe because they know he's too overpowered. Which I think is a shame, because they didn't do that in 4, and that's the only reason why I bothered S-ranking every mission on every difficulty. So the fact that you can't do it, well, you can S-rank every mission on every difficulty, but you won't get any trophy for it, and you're just doing it for pride, which won't mean much, because people will say, well, you did it with the easy character. Whilst people trying to go for platinums have to do it the suffering way of, you know, mission 10, 12, and 18, and having to put up with V, especially on D&D and Hell and Hell. Well, I say that Hell and Hell as V is not too bad, because it's just keeping your distance. But everything else... But you can absolutely set yourself up as a one-man army with the summon swords, once again, like you can in 4. And hopefully, I say that, I doubt any of you watching have actually been around since the very, very start. My very first Let's Play, where I had zero self-confidence and a really shit mic. And was, like, because of my awkwardness, barely spoke. But, I lost my trail of thought for a second. hopefully guys who watched my 4 playthrough can see throughout the duration of this how much better I've got as Vergil. Because like after that, because originally the main reason why I wanted to do a second playthrough of 4 Special Edition at some point is because I got drastically better as Vergil. I started really experimenting with a lot more with the blue machine that is Vergil. After that Let's Play, like I really got back into the zone of Devil May Cry after that Let's Play. So I started really mastering it. I started doing jump cancelling, because back in that 4 Let's Play I never did jump cancels throughout that at all of it, because Vergil was so wickedly overpowered even without it. Whilst hopefully throughout this you'll see me do it much more often, especially with LDK where it's going to be more demanding that I play at my best. And with things like Helm Splitter, not Judgment Cut, because I'm doing an ultimate, so Judgment Cut's the first word that comes to my head. Helm Splitter and a good jump cancel will start doing insane damage. Also, Vergil has some really nice unique taunts, like exclusive to 5, that he didn't have in 4, like this one. This is one of his Triple S taunts. He also does indeed have a dancing based taunt if you get EX propagation, and he also has a unique taunt if you beat Bloody Palace. Both of which I'll see if I can squeeze showing off, but it's kind of difficult to, get the whole animation of them off when you've also got to worry about, a million enemies because of the multiplication. And I'm pretty sure the multiplication is supposed to be around 3 times the amount of enemies as normal, like for certain encounters, but it feels like some encounters are much more than 3 times. I feel like some of them are closer to 10 times, and I'm not exaggerating. Like over here, this is around 5 times if you look at the crystal enemies alone, or say 4 times. No, it is 5 times. This is my eyes playing tricks on me. There are 5 of them. I'm trying to play and talk, alright? But this, it does feel like a much bigger multiplication. But look at how much damage we're doing per whip. But I know they have normal based health on LDK, that they have less health. But even so, you wouldn't be doing this damage as anyone else. If the enemies were closer, that taunt would actually launch a spike into them that would, well, spike them up. So that taunt actually has combo options. He also has 2 air taunts, but I'm not sure what designates the second one of the 2, other than maybe like a high stylish rank. It just seems to come out sort of at random. Because there's one that's a guaranteed always, which is where he throws 2 and 3 spikes down on the floor in front of him. I say spikes like the summon swords. He throws 3 of them down on the floor like beneath him. But if you've got Yamato out, and I think a high enough stylish rank, he will do a very quick whip with the with Yamato instead. That will actually do damage, so you can combo into it. But like I said, at least for me, I'm sure there's something to it, but it's just never felt as consistent as it maybe should be. So I've never really tried to. Maybe that's something else I'll do after this. Like, with DMC6 Special Edition. Well, I come back to it and say, man, remember when I didn't do this in 5 Special Edition? Well, no, I've learned since then. The only thing that's probably going to end up getting me hit a hell of a lot is that in LDK, and it's the same in 4, I lose track of myself a lot. Which is part of the reason, but not the main reason, why I'm using Vergil's alternate EX color and not his normal. Is so I can see him easier, because the black coat amidst all the enemies, you miss him, you lose him, just like you sort of lose the other characters. So having him in his traditional blue just makes it easier for me to see him. But on a side note, if you've been a part of the series for as long as I have, I don't think I'm the only one who did this. I think everyone went, yeah, like, he looks badass in black, but blue, his traditional color scheme. Like, there's just something about his traditional blue with the gold on the inside that's always stuck out to me and always been badass to me. I've only ever cosplayed... Fuck, I've got to try and climb this while I talk, so this will be interesting. I've only ever cosplayed as one character in my life, and it is Vergil. I have the blue coat. It's the DMC3 version of the blue coat, because this was a while ago. And I still have that coat, and it still fits me, even though I'm a bit older and, to be honest, a bit chubbier. Lockdown, what it's done to us. But I've always just had a soft spot for the blue coat. I love the blue coat. I love the old school aesthetic. And so, of course, I'm going to put it back on, even if I do absolutely agree that the black looks really cool on him in 5. And in fact, I think with the more gritty and realistic style, black is more suiting to him than the old blue. But for the sake of nostalgia, and this is my playthrough, we can do him in blue because he was in black in the main journey. Because you can actually change the colour of characters in cutscenes. Like, I could have gone into the cutscene viewer and changed Vergil to blue there and gone from there, but I just... no. I thought for the main story, be it the way it's supposed to be, and then for this, I can mix it up. Which also applies to V. If you're using the EX color, when you use World of V, V's in his EX color, which is why he was in a green coat and not a black one. But we can zip our way straight through here because we know where we're going. We don't need to stop for optional encounters. There's no collectibles I feel like showcasing. Like, all the secret missions are available as Vergil, so it's not like DMC4 where a couple of them are just, they're not happening. There are a couple secret missions in 4 Special Edition. They were physically impossible as Vergil because one of them was Royal Guard a bunch. One of them absolutely expected you to use the Buster Arm, which I think that one was possible. It was just an absolute nightmare. Whilst in this, every single one of them is doable. And they did that deliberetely, so then with the release of Special Edition, you could dive straight in as Vergil and try and get a complete save if you so chose. I didn't. Because my first experience with this was the Vergil DLC on PS4, which came out like a month later. But then when I came to Special Edition, because Capcom, you know, refused to allow us to transfer our saves, even though it's mostly the same game, just with a few extra bells and whistles, I did a normal playthrough first to get everything. Because for me personally, my biggest struggle is playing as Vergil when I don't have his toolkit. Because I want to use everything, and I want to use everything now, kind of thing. Restricting myself to not having it for a while would have just hurt my playstyle. So I was like, you know what, I'm going to wait until I've not only beat the game, but done a Bloody Palace run to get enough red orbs to confidently buy everything. But as you can tell by my red orb count, yeah, since getting my PS5, I've been playing a lot of the MC5's SE. The fact that I have every EX provocation as well probably gives it away that I've been playing a lot. Mostly Bloody Palace runs because you rack up so many red orbs, it's ridiculous. I remember when DMC5 first came out, like in that first month before Bloody Palace came out, your best way to grind red orbs was to go to mission 13 as Dante, go to the bottom floor, and just use the hat on everything, and just use the timing technique where you press the button as the hat returns to you to yank all the enemies in, and you just infinitely repeated it until everything died because it did do damage, and then you reset the mission and did it again. And you just rinse and repeat it. It was very grindy, but I did it. I did it because I wanted one. I wasn't going to grind for all 3 of them, but I wanted at least one EX provocation before Bloody Palace came out and made the grind obsolete, so I got Nero's at the time. Nowadays, I say it doesn't matter because everything's out that is out for free, and Special Edition now exists. Which I said, it is just a thing that on Capcom's part that did annoy me a little bit. Like, I get it's their business and they can do whatever they want, but this game is just DMC5 with extra stuff. It's not like a completely new build. Like, they haven't changed mechanics. Like, all the stuff that wasn't in base 5 that I've complained about still isn't in Special Edition. They just added turbo mode, added ray tracing, and added LDK. Because Vergil, like I said, was DLC as well. So Vergil, I'm tempted to not even count. But because of this, they decided that no, you have to buy the whole game again, even if you own it on PS4 digitally or physically, or if you have it on Xbox One digitally physical. You have to buy it again on Special Edition to play it on Special Edition, and you can't transfer your save whatsoever. Which is more baffling to me, because... And I'm not taking this as a huge jab at Square Enix, I promise. Square Enix are notoriously a far greedier company than most others, especially in the Japanese market. In fact, in Japan exclusively, I'd say they're one of the greediest. Yet the 7 remake, their perfect baby, that sold like hotcakes, got the highest reviewed score, and is more hype than anything, is getting a free upgrade for next gen, and you can transfer your save. It's like, if Square Enix can do it, what the fuck's Capcom's excuse? Especially because 7 Remake is also getting a new difficulty added. It's getting normal classic. It's also getting a lot more quality of life performances like that. It's also going to support 4K and or 60 frames if you want. I think it's only I don't think it'll do 4K 60. I think it's going to be 1080 60 or 4K 30, but I'm not certain on that. I'll have to look into it. And has extra content with an extra playable character because it's going to have Yuffie. And it's like, it's a similar deal here going on between the two of them. And the 7 Remake, I'm pretty sure, was also a more expensive game to make. Yet the 7 Remake's free if you have it on previous gen for next gen, and DMC5 is not. Step it up, Capcom. Oh, other new things. I was just fucking around to finish my sentence there. if you swing and then immediately dodge, Vergil's dodge is different. One of the biggest things that everyone hoped for after 4 SE is that Vergil would get free access to a warp dodge. Because he could do it all the time when you're fighting against him, but he couldn't do it naturally. He had the old roll. He has 2 designated warp dodges. Well, I say that 3, but the last one is the returner. When you're in Sin Devil Trigger, every dodge has the warp effect on it that it used to in 4 SE. But the normal roll, if you dodge immediately after attack, will be replaced with a warp dodge, and the distance of it is so much further than the normal dodge. Like, it is worth always trying to go on the aggressive, then dodging, just because you warp. And if you're locked on, you will circle them, and so suddenly you can be right behind enemies in a single strike. You just tap the attack button once, dodge, and you're rammed behind their back. Which is badass. And he also has a designated new dodge, where originally, if you hit the circle button or B button and there's no enemy nearby and you're not locked on, he would warp up. It's the only way to get access to a double jump, which, full disclosure, is still the only access to a double jump. Vergil doesn't have a traditional air hike. But if you're not locked onto anything at all, then press circle, Vergil will do a warp dodge regardless. The only thing is that if you do a warp dodge when an enemy is in the vicinity and it's too early, like it doesn't dodge an attack, you're just doing it, it will spend the concentration. But if you do it and it does actually avoid an attack, you gain concentration and it has a really cool slow-mo effect. But this is time for Goliath, and similar to Urizen, you can end this fight insanely quickly. It's as soon as you land down here, go into your beast mode, go into Sin Devil Trigger, and just unleash. You will be able to stun this son of a bitch before we even leave the church. In fact, I'm going to make it a bet right this second now that this boss will die before we have to leave the church. Well, I said that he might make us, but we're going to kill him before he breaks it open. So let's just go for the Deep Stinger again. If I went for Hell on Earth a second time, that would definitely kill it then and there, but I want to keep my style ranking up a little bit. Well, I'll be able to... I couldn't squeeze in one more. So he's going to do this, and he's dead. So he didn't even get to leave. And I'm going to wrap it up for now, because this is already going to be like a 28 long minute lot parts here. Because we will get through this campaign a lot quicker than we did Nero's, because obviously no cutscenes. But that being said, we're going to continue this journey of kicking ass as Vergil next time. So until then, you guys take care now. Peace.